Captain Cale Armitage sat alone in the dimly lit bar, his fingers tracing the rim of a half-empty glass. The neon sign outside flickered erratically, casting shadows across his worn face. He wasn't hard to spot. His dark uniform was patched and faded, a stark contrast to the sleek attire of the other patrons. Once celebrated as one of humanity's finest soldiers, Cale now carried the weight of failure like an invisible chain around his neck. His last mission had ended in disaster. A colony destroyed, lives lost, and his reputation shattered. Redemption felt like a distant dream. The door creaked open, breaking the monotony of the room. A tall figure entered, cloaked in shimmering fabric that seemed to ripple with starlight. Heads turned, whispers filled the air. It wasn't every day you saw someone who looked so alien. The stranger moved gracefully toward Cale, their elongated limbs gliding effortlessly through the crowded space. They stopped at his table, their luminous eyes locking onto his. "You are Cale Armitage," the visitor said, their voice melodic yet firm. It wasn't a question. Cale raised an eyebrow, but didn't bother looking up. "Depends on who's asking." "My name is irrelevant," the alien replied, pulling out a chair without waiting for permission. "What matters is why I am here. You have skills we need, and a debt to repay." That got Cale's attention. He leaned back, studying the intruder more closely. Their skin shimmered faintly, like liquid silver, and their features were angular yet strikingly beautiful. Whoever, or whatever, they were, they radiated authority. Still, Cale wasn't about to let them walk all over him. "Look," he said, his tone clipped. "I don't do charity work, and I sure as hell don't take orders from aliens, so unless you've got credits or something worth my time, this conversation ends here." The alien tilted their head slightly, as if amused by his defiance. Then they slid a small holographic device onto the table. With a soft hum, it projected an image into the air, a young woman with iridescent skin and piercing blue eyes. Her expression was calm but resolute, even regal. She wore elaborate armor adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with light. "This is Princess Lyra Valen of the Luminal Empire," the alien explained. "She has been captured by the Obsidian Order, a faction bent on destroying her people. Without her, the Empire will fall, and countless lives will be lost." Cale frowned. He'd heard rumors about the Obsidian Order, fanatics who despised anything non-human and sought to purge the galaxy of diversity. But what did this have to do with him? Humans weren't exactly known for playing nice with aliens, especially not ones as advanced as the Luminals. "And?" Cale asked, crossing his arms. "Why come to me?" "Because you're desperate," the alien said bluntly. "Desperate enough to risk everything for a second chance. This mission will be dangerous, perhaps suicidal. But if you succeed, your name will no longer carry shame. You'll be remembered as a hero, not just among humans, but across the stars." For a moment, Cale said nothing. He stared at the hologram of the princess, her serene gaze seeming to pierce right through him. Was this some kind of trick? Could he really trust these aliens? And yet, the idea of doing something meaningful again, of proving himself worthy after all these years, it was tempting. Finally, he sighed and reached for the device, pocketing it. "Fine," he muttered. "But if I'm going down, I'm taking whoever gets in my way with me." The alien smiled, a small, satisfied curve of their lips. "Good. Meet us at the coordinates embedded in the device. Time is short." As the mysterious figure rose and left, Cale drained the rest of his drink. For the first time in months, he felt a spark of purpose ignite within him. Little did he know, this decision would change not only his life, but the fate of 2 civilizations. He stood, tossed a few coins onto the table, and walked out into the night, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The journey began under the cover of darkness, with Cale standing on the edge of a crumbling landing pad at the outskirts of the city. A sleek, angular ship hovered nearby, its surface shimmering faintly as if alive. It wasn't human-made. That much was clear from the strange hum it emitted, and the way its shape seemed to shift slightly when you looked away. Beside him stood Zinara, the shapeshifter who had introduced herself as part of the team. Her form wavered between humanoid and something more fluid, unsettling Kel every time he glanced her way. "You sure this thing can get us there?" Cale asked, nodding toward the ship. His voice carried skepticism, but underneath lay a flicker of unease. He'd fought alongside humans before, never aliens. Trust didn't come easy. Zinara smirked, her sharp teeth glinting in the low light. "This thing is faster than anything your kind has ever built. You'll see." Before Cal could respond, the ramp lowered, revealing the rest of the crew. There were 6 of them in total, each hailing from different corners of the galaxy. Some looked vaguely humanoid. Others bore no resemblance to anything Cal had seen before. One member, a burly alien named Vrax, had skin like cracked stone and eyes that burned orange. Another, a slender being called Sira, floated slightly above the ground, her translucent form pulsing softly with energy. As they boarded the ship, Cale felt out of place among these strangers. The interior was sleek and organic, walls rippling gently as if breathing. Everything about it screamed alien, and not in a comforting way. Still, Cale pushed aside his discomfort and focused on the mission ahead. Lyra's holographic image lingered in his mind, her steady gaze urging him forward. Their destination was a fortress hidden deep within an asteroid belt controlled by the Obsidian Order. Getting there wouldn't be easy. The asteroids were heavily mined, their jagged surfaces bristling with automated turrets designed to obliterate intruders. Worse still, patrols roamed the area, scanning for unauthorized vessels. "Stick to the plan," Zinara instructed as the ship slipped into stealth mode, its engines silent. "We avoid detection until we're close enough to deploy pods. From there, we go on foot." Cale nodded, gripping his rifle tightly. He hated relying on technology he didn't understand, but he had no choice. As they approached the asteroid field, tension crackled through the air. Everyone knew the stakes. If they were caught now, the mission would fail before it even began. Suddenly, alarms blared. A patrol ship emerged from behind a massive asteroid, its weapons charging. Cal's heart raced as Zinara cursed under her breath. "They spotted us," she hissed. "Hold on." The ship jolted violently as Zinara maneuvered wildly, dodging blasts while trying to stay hidden. Cal stumbled, slamming into the wall. Across from him, Vrax growled, his fists clenched. "Let me take care of them," he snarled. "No," Zinara snapped. "We stick to the plan. No unnecessary risks." After what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes, they managed to slip past the patrol and dive deeper into the asteroid field. Breathing heavily, Cal glanced around the cabin. Everyone seemed shaken but determined. For the first time, he noticed how united they were despite their differences. Maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance. When they finally reached the drop-off point, Cale stepped into his pod, feeling the cold metal press against his back. As the hatch sealed shut, he stared out at the swirling chaos of asteroids and thought of Lyra. Whatever awaited them inside that fortress, one thing was certain: failure wasn't an option. With a deafening roar, the pods launched, hurtling toward the fortress like shooting stars. The real challenge was about to begin. The fortress loomed ahead, a monolithic structure carved into the jagged surface of the largest asteroid. Its dark, metallic walls bristled with weapons turrets and glowing red sensors that scanned the surrounding void for intruders. To Cale, it looked less like a prison and more like the mouth of some ancient beast waiting to devour them whole. As their pods landed silently on a shadowed ledge, he couldn't shake the feeling they were walking straight into a trap. "Stay sharp," Zinara whispered as she led the team through a narrow maintenance hatch. Her form shimmered slightly, blending with the shadows. "Security here is tight. One wrong move, and we're dead." Cale adjusted his grip on his rifle, his eyes scanning every corner. The interior was eerily silent except for the faint hum of machinery echoing through the corridors. Walls lined with pulsating conduits cast an unsettling glow, making it hard to tell where one hallway ended and another began. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of the mission pressed down on him with each passing second. They moved quickly, sticking to the plan. Vrax took point, using his brute strength to pry open locked doors, while Sira floated beside him, her translucent body occasionally flickering as she disabled security systems. Kale stayed close to Zanara, though he still didn't fully trust her. Something about her shifting shape, her cryptic comments, unsettled him. But now wasn't the time to dwell on doubts. After what felt like hours of navigating labyrinthine passages, they finally reached the holding cells. Rows of energy barriers lined the walls, each containing prisoners who stared out blankly, their forms gaunt and lifeless. Most weren't even humanoid. Some resembled insects, others blobs of light or liquid. It was a grim reminder of the Obsidian Order's cruelty. They didn't just imprison enemies, they broke them. Then Kale saw her. Princess Lyra stood at the far end of the corridor, her iridescent skin glowing faintly despite the dim lighting. Unlike the other captives, she didn't cower or slump in defeat. She stood tall, her piercing blue eyes fixed on the approaching team. For a moment, Kale forgot how to breathe. She wasn't just beautiful. She radiated strength, dignity, and an unshakable resolve that made his chest tighten. "Who are you?" Lyra asked, her voice calm but commanding. Even trapped behind an energy field, she carried herself like royalty. "We're here to get you out," Kale replied. Stepping forward, he activated the device Zanara had given him, a small, handheld gadget meant to disable the barrier. With a soft whir, the field dissolved, and Lyra stepped free. Her gaze lingered on Kale for a moment longer than necessary before sweeping over the rest of the team. "You risk your lives for me," she said softly. "Why?" "It's complicated," Zanara interjected, glancing nervously down the corridor. "We need to move. Now." Lyra nodded, but instead of following immediately, she turned back to the other cells. "What about them?" she demanded, gesturing to the remaining prisoners. "You can't leave them here." "There's no time," Zanara hissed. "If we don't get you out, everything falls apart." Lyra hesitated, her jaw tightening. Then, without warning, alarms blared throughout the fortress. Red lights flashed, bathing the corridor in a harsh crimson glow. Guards could be heard shouting in the distance, their heavy footsteps growing louder. "We've been compromised," Sira exclaimed, her ethereal form flickering erratically. "We have to go." Kale grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "There's nothing we can do for them right now," he said firmly. "But if you want to save your people, you need to survive this." For a brief moment, anger flared in Lyra's eyes. Then, reluctantly, she nodded and followed. They sprinted through the twisting corridors, dodging patrols and narrowly avoiding detection. At one point, a squad of guards appeared around a corner, cutting off their escape route. Without hesitation, Lyra stepped forward, raising her hands in a gesture Kale didn't recognize. A wave of shimmering energy erupted from her palms, knocking the guards unconscious. Kale stared at her, stunned. "You didn't say you could do that," he muttered. "I didn't think it mattered." Lyra shot back, her tone laced with both irritation and amusement. "Now keep moving." As they continued their desperate flight, Kale found himself increasingly impressed and intrigued by the princess. She wasn't just a victim waiting to be rescued. She was a fighter willing to risk her life for others. And for the first time since joining this mission, he realized saving her wasn't just about redemption. It was about ensuring someone like her survived to lead a better future. But as they neared the extraction point, Kale couldn't shake the feeling that escaping this fortress would only be the beginning of something far greater and far more dangerous. The escape from the fortress was a blur of chaos and adrenaline. Every corridor they ran through seemed to lead to another ambush. every shadow hiding an enemy waiting to strike. Cal's muscles burned as he fired his rifle again and again, each shot echoing like thunder in the narrow halls. Beside him, Lyra moved with surprising agility, her shimmering energy blasts cutting down guards who dared to block their path. She wasn't just surviving. She was fighting back, proving herself not only as a leader, but as someone willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with her rescuers. But the cost of their progress became painfully clear when they reached a massive blast door blocking their way. The controls were fried, likely sabotaged by the Obsidian Order to prevent escapes. Vrax stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "Stand back," he growled, gripping the edges of the heavy metal door. With a roar that shook the walls, he began prying it open inch by agonizing inch. Sparks flew as circuits overloaded, and alarms screamed louder than ever. "Hurry!" Zinara shouted, glancing over her shoulder. A squad of armored guards was closing in fast, their weapons charging. Syrah floated beside her translucent form flickering erratically as she tried to hold up a weak barrier to shield them. With one final heave, Vrax tore the door free, creating just enough space for the team to slip through. But as he turned to follow, a barrage of plasma fire struck him square in the chest. His massive frame staggered, then collapsed to the ground with a deafening crash. "No," Cal yelled, raising his rifle to return fire. He wanted to rush to Vrax's side, but Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "We can't help him now," she said sharply, her voice breaking. Tears glistened in her glowing eyes, but there was no time to mourn. Vrax let out a guttural laugh as he lay dying, blood pooling beneath him. "Go," he rasped, his orange eyes dimming. "Finish what we started." Cal hesitated for only a second before nodding grimly. They couldn't afford to stop. Not now. As the team scrambled through the gap, Syrah released her failing barrier, allowing the pursuing guards to flood into the corridor behind them. The explosion that followed was deafening, sealing off the passage and buying them precious seconds. They pressed on, hearts pounding, bodies aching. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down not just by exhaustion but by grief. Vrax wasn't the first loss. They'd already left others behind during the infiltration, but his sacrifice hit hard. He had been a warrior, loyal to the cause, and now he was gone. As they neared the rendezvous point, another tragedy struck. Syrah, whose energy had been waning since disabling the security systems earlier, suddenly faltered mid-step. Her translucent form flickered wildly before dissolving into nothingness. She didn't scream or cry out. She simply vanished, leaving behind only silence. Lyra fell to her knees, clutching her head as if the weight of their losses was too much to bear. "This is my fault," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I should have stayed. I shouldn't have let you come for me." Cal crouched beside her, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "No," he said firmly. "This isn't your fault. We chose this. Every single one of us knew the risks. What matters now is finishing what we started." Zinara appeared at the end of the corridor, signaling frantically. "We're almost there. Move." Helping Lyra to her feet, Cal pushed aside the ache in his chest. Grief would come later. For now, survival was all that mattered. As they sprinted toward the extraction pod waiting outside the fortress, Cal glanced back one last time at the horrors they'd left behind. Each life lost fueled his determination. This mission wasn't just about saving Lyra anymore. It was about ensuring their sacrifices weren't in vain. When they finally reached the pod and launched into the void, Cal stared out at the fortress shrinking in the distance. It felt hollow, knowing they'd escaped, but at such a terrible cost. Still, as Lyra sat beside him, her glowing presence a beacon of hope amidst the darkness, he reminded himself why they'd fought so hard. The battle might be over, but the war was far from won, and Cal knew he'd do whatever it took to see it through. The pod hurtled through the void, its hull rattling violently as it broke free from the asteroid field. Inside, the remaining members of the team were silent, their faces etched with exhaustion and sorrow. Kale sat slumped against the wall, his rifle resting across his knees. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of everything they'd endured. Lyra sat beside him, her luminous skin dimmed slightly, as if even her light couldn't escape the shadow of loss. Zenera piloted the craft, her shifting form blending seamlessly with the controls, while the memory of Rax and Syrah lingered like ghosts in the cramped space. After what felt like an eternity, the pod docked with a larger luminal vessel hidden in orbit around a dying star. The airlock hissed open, revealing a group of aliens dressed in flowing robes that shimmered like liquid metal. They moved with purpose, their expressions a mix of relief and urgency. One of them, a tall figure with elongated limbs and golden eyes, stepped forward, bowing deeply to Lyra. "Princess," the alien said, their voice resonating with reverence. "You are safe." Lyra nodded, though her expression remained somber. She turned to gesture toward Kel and Zenera. "These two saved my life. Without them, I wouldn't be here." The golden-eyed alien inclined their head respectfully to Kale. "We owe you a great debt, human." Kale shifted uncomfortably under the scrutiny. He wasn't used to being treated with such respect, especially not by aliens. "Just doing my job," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. But deep down, he couldn't deny the strange sense of pride swelling within him. For years, he'd carried the burden of failure, convinced he was nothing more than a washed-up soldier. Now, standing among these beings who regarded him as a hero, he felt something unfamiliar: hope. They were escorted to the heart of the ship, where the true majesty of the luminal empire revealed itself. The corridors glowed softly, lined with organic structures that pulsed faintly, as if alive. Holographic displays floated in midair, showing images of distant worlds teeming with life and harmony. It was unlike anything Kel had ever seen. So different from the cold, mechanical efficiency of human ships or the brutal utilitarian design of the Obsidian Order's vessels. Their destination was the command center, a vast chamber filled with luminals working in perfect synchronization. At the center stood a towering hologram of the galaxy, dotted with glowing symbols representing various civilizations. When Lyra entered, the room fell silent. Dozens of pairs of eyes turned to her, some filled with relief, others with barely contained despair. "My people," Lyra began, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling beneath the surface. "I have returned, but we cannot celebrate yet. The Obsidian Order grows stronger every day. If we do not act, they will destroy us, and countless others." A murmur rippled through the crowd. One elder stepped forward, their silver hair flowing like water. "What would you have us do, Your Highness?" Lyra hesitated, glancing at Kale. Then she straightened, her gaze unwavering. "We strike back. We dismantle their weapons, expose their lies, and unite those who oppose them. But this time, we fight not just for survival. We fight for peace." The room erupted into murmurs of agreement, though Kale noticed a few skeptical glances directed at him. Clearly, not everyone trusted a human, even one who had risked his life for their princess. As the meeting continued, Lyra pulled Kale aside. "You've done more than anyone could ask," she said softly. "But now, I must lead my people. Will you stand with us?" Kale looked at her, seeing not just a princess, but someone willing to fight for a better future. Slowly, he nodded. "Yeah," he said, "I'll stand with you." For the first time in years, Kale felt like he belonged, not because of where he came from, but because of what he chose to fight for. And as the luminal fleet prepared for war, he knew the hardest battles were still ahead. Kale stood on the observation deck of the luminal flagship, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. His reflection shimmered faintly in the transparent barrier, a stark contrast to the vibrant glow of alien technology surrounding him. For days, he'd been part of planning sessions, strategy meetings, and tactical simulations, all leading up to one final mission. The Obsidian Order had constructed a devastating weapon deep within their territory, capable of annihilating entire star systems. If it launched, not even the Luminal's advanced defenses could stop it. Time was running out. Lyra approached quietly, her presence announced only by the soft hum of energy emanating from her skin. She stopped beside him, her gaze following his out into the void. "You look troubled," she said gently. Cale sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "This plan, it's risky. Too many variables, too much room for things to go wrong." "It always is," Lyra replied, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. "But doing nothing is no longer an option." Cale turned to face her, his brow furrowed. "And what about you? You're their leader, their symbol of hope. Do you really think charging into enemy territory is wise?" Lyra met his eyes, her expression resolute. "I am not just a symbol, Cale. I'm a warrior, same as you. My place is on the front lines, fighting for my people, for everyone who believes in peace." Her words struck a chord deep within him. He'd spent so long doubting himself, questioning whether he deserved redemption. But here was Lyra, ready to risk everything without hesitation. How could he argue when her conviction burned brighter than any star? "Fine," Cale said finally, his tone firm. "But if we're doing this, let me handle the dangerous parts. You stay safe." Lyra smiled faintly, though there was a flicker of amusement in her glowing blue eyes. "I'll do my best to follow orders, Captain." The mission began under the cover of darkness, with Cale leading a small strike team toward the weapons construction site. They moved silently through the asteroid field where the fortress once stood, now replaced by a massive orbital platform bristling with defenses. The air was tense, every shadow a potential threat. As they infiltrated the facility, Cale noticed something odd. Zinara, who had accompanied them despite her injuries, seemed unusually distant. Her form shifted erratically, as if struggling to maintain stability. When Cale confronted her, she hesitated before speaking. "This might be goodbye," she admitted softly. "My kind, we don't last long after using our abilities too much. I knew coming here would mean sacrificing myself, but I couldn't leave without seeing this through." Before Cale could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Guards swarmed the corridors, forcing the team to split up. In the chaos, Zinara disappeared, leaving behind only a faint shimmer in the air. Cale pressed on, determined to complete the mission. With Lyra by his side, they reached the core chamber, a cavernous room dominated by a monstrous device pulsing with dark energy. As Cale planted explosives around its base, Lyra kept watch, her energy blasts fending off waves of attackers. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the facility. Debris rained down as sections of the ceiling collapsed. Cale shielded Lyra with his body, taking the brunt of the impact. Pain shot through his ribs, but he gritted his teeth and focused on finishing the job. When the dust settled, Zinara reappeared, or rather, what remained of her. Her form was barely recognizable, flickering like a dying flame. "It's done," she whispered. "The perimeter is clear. Go." Tears welled in Lyra's eyes as she reached out to touch Zinara's fading hand. "Thank you," she murmured. Zinara smiled weakly before vanishing completely. With seconds to spare, Cale detonated the charges, destroying the weapon in a brilliant flash of light. As the facility crumbled around them, Lyra dragged Cale toward the escape pods, refusing to leave him behind. Back aboard the Luminal flagship, medics worked tirelessly to save Cale's life. Hovering nearby, Lyra watched over him, her heart heavy with sorrow, yet filled with gratitude. Sacrifices had been made, lives lost, but the galaxy was safer because of them. For Cale, survival felt bittersweet. He'd found purpose again, but at a cost he wasn't sure he could bear. Still, as Lyra gripped his hand tightly, he realized one thing. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The medical bay aboard the Luminal flagship was eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of machinery and the rhythmic beeping of monitors tracking Cale's vital signs. His body lay still on the biobed, his face pale and gaunt beneath the harsh glow of overhead lights. The injuries he'd sustained during the sabotage mission were severe: broken ribs, internal bleeding, and burns that covered much of his torso. The Luminal's advanced technology had stabilized him, but recovery would take time. Time Kale wasn't sure he had. Lyra sat beside him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her iridescent skin dimmed slightly, reflecting the weight of her emotions. She hadn't left his side since they'd returned, ignoring the protests of her advisors who urged her to focus on rebuilding their forces. For Lyra, this wasn't just about duty, it was personal. Kale had risked everything to protect her, to ensure the success of their mission. Now, she refused to leave until he woke up. As hours turned into days, Kale drifted in and out of consciousness. When he finally opened his eyes fully, the first thing he saw was Lyra's glowing face hovering over him. Her lips curved into a relieved smile, though tears glistened in her blue eyes. "You're awake," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Kale groaned softly, wincing as pain shot through his chest. "What happened?" "The weapons destroyed," Lyra said, gently brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Thanks to you and Zinara, we stopped them, but it came at a cost." Kale closed his eyes, memories flooding back. The explosions, the collapsing facility, Zinara's final moments. He clenched his fists, guilt gnawing at him. So many lives lost, so many sacrifices made. Was it worth it? "It should have been me," he muttered bitterly. "I should have stayed behind." "No," Lyra said firmly, gripping his hand. "You're here because you chose to fight. Not just for me, but for everyone. Your survival matters, Kale. You inspire others, even if you don't see it." Her words struck a chord deep within him. For so long, Kale had defined himself by his failures, carrying the shame of past mistakes like a chain around his neck. But now, surrounded by people who believed in him, he began to wonder if redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but building something better from its ashes. Over the next few days, Kale slowly regained his strength. During his recovery, Lyra visited him often, sharing stories of her world. She spoke of the Luminal Empire's history, a civilization built on cooperation, innovation, and unity. It was a stark contrast to humanity's fractured existence, rife with distrust and conflict. Yet she also acknowledged flaws within her own society, admitting that peace required constant effort. One evening, as the ship orbited a distant nebula, Lyra brought Kale to the observation deck. The view was breathtaking. Swirling clouds of violet and gold stretched endlessly across the void, dotted with stars that sparkled like diamonds. For a moment, they simply stood there, taking it all in. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Lyra asked quietly. Kale hesitated, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I used to think my story ended with failure. Now, I'm not so sure." Lyra turned to face him, her expression tender yet resolute. "You've already changed so much. For me, for my people. But your journey doesn't have to stop here. There's still so much you can do to help bridge the gap between our worlds." Her words lingered in the air, planting a seed of hope within him. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, he felt ready to face it. Back in the command center, preparations were underway for the next phase of the war. Intelligence reports revealed that while the weapon's destruction dealt a significant blow to the Obsidian Order, they were far from defeated. Their leader, a shadowy figure known only as Maltherin, remained at large, rallying his forces for a counterattack. As Kale joined Lyra in strategizing their next move, he realized the battle ahead wouldn't be easy. But standing beside her, surrounded by allies who shared their vision of peace, he found renewed purpose. Together, they would fight, not just to survive, but to create a future where differences weren't feared, but celebrated. And somewhere in the vastness of space, amidst the wreckage of battles fought and lives lost, a new chapter began. The war wasn't over, but for the first time in months, Kale felt a sense of calm. He stood on the bridge of the Luminal flagship, watching as stars streaked past the viewport. The ship hummed softly beneath his feet, its organic design pulsing faintly with life. Around him, luminals worked tirelessly, their movements synchronized and purposeful. Lyra stood at the center of it all, her presence commanding yet gentle. She had grown into her role as leader, not just of her people, but of a coalition determined to end the Obsidian Order's reign of terror. Cale glanced down at the small device in his hand, a data chip containing coordinates for Earth. It had been delivered earlier that day by one of the few remaining human ships loyal to the Luminal cause. They were offering him safe passage home. After everything he'd endured, after every sacrifice made alongside these aliens, the thought of returning to his old life felt hollow. Yet, leaving meant stepping away from the only place where he truly belonged now. "You're quiet," Lyra said, approaching him. Her voice broke through his thoughts like sunlight-piercing clouds. "Just thinking," Cale replied, slipping the chip into his pocket. "About what comes next." Lyra tilted her head slightly, studying him. "And? I don't know," he admitted. "Earth isn't the same anymore. Not for me. But staying here, I'm not sure I belong either." Lyra smiled softly, her glowing eyes filled with understanding. "Belonging isn't about where you come from, Cale. It's about who stands beside you. You've earned your place among us. Among me. If you choose to stay, we'll build something new together. Something better." Her words stirred something deep within him. For so long, he'd defined himself by his failures, carrying the weight of guilt like an anchor dragging him under. But here, surrounded by beings who saw potential in him despite his flaws, he began to imagine a different path. One where humanity could rise above its fears and prejudices, joining hands with others to forge a brighter future. "What if I can't live up to that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You already have," Lyra said firmly. "Every step you've taken, from saving me to destroying the weapon, has brought us closer to peace, and there's still so much more you can do." For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the ship filled the silence, punctuated by the soft glow of starlight streaming through the viewport. Then, slowly, Cale nodded. "All right," he said, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I'll stay, but only if you promise to keep teaching me how to be part of this." Lyra laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. "Deal." Days later, the Luminal fleet prepared to launch a final assault against the Obsidian Order's stronghold. Intelligence reports indicated Maltharon was holed up inside, rallying his forces for one last stand. It would be dangerous, perhaps even suicidal. But Cale didn't hesitate when Lyra asked him to join the team leading the charge. As they suited up, Cale caught glimpses of the crew around him. Some were luminals, others representatives of species he'd never seen before. Each carried scars, physical or emotional, but none showed fear. Together, they formed a mosaic of resilience and hope. Before boarding their vessels, Lyra pulled Cale aside. "Whatever happens today," she said, her voice steady yet tender, "know that you've already changed the galaxy. Your courage has inspired countless others, including me." Cale met her gaze, his heart swelling with determination. "Then let's finish what we started." The battle raged fiercely, explosions lighting up the void like fireworks. Inside the stronghold, Cale fought side by side with Lyra, their bond stronger than ever. When Maltharon finally fell, his defeat marked the end of an era, but also the beginning of a new one. As the dust settled, Cale stood beside Lyra on the bridge once more. Below them, planets orbited peacefully, free from the shadow of tyranny. Humanity had begun reaching out to its alien neighbors, tentative steps toward unity turning into strides of cooperation. Cale looked out at the stars, no longer feeling lost among them. Home wasn't a place, it was the people you chose to stand with. And for the first time in years, he knew exactly where he belonged. Together, Cale and Lyra turned their attention to the horizon, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The galaxy was vast, full of possibilities, and they would explore it together, forging a legacy of hope that would endure for generations to come.